report card looks right now?
I think report cards can look pretty good if that's where we're at. But look, the idea that Mitch has been very clear. He's going to do anything to prevent Biden from being a success. I get on with Mitch. I actually like Mitch McConnell. We like one another. But he has one straightforward objective. Make sure that there's nothing I do that makes me look good in the mind, in his mind, with the public at large. And that's okay. I'm a big boy. I've been here before. But the fact is that I think that I'm happy to debate and have a referendum on how I handle the economy, whether or not I've made progress on. Look, again, how can I'm taking too long answering your questions. I apologize. I think that the fundamental question is, what's Mitch for? What's he for on immigration? What's he for? What's he proposing to make anything better? What's he for dealing with Russia? It's different than I'm proposing that many of his Republican friends or his colleagues are supporting as well. What's he for on these things? What are they for? So everything's a choice, a choice. I think, look, I've laid out a proposal on immigration that if we passed it, we'd be in a totally different place right now. But we're not there because we don't have a single Republican vote. My buddy John McCain's gone. So, I mean, it's going to take time. And again, I go back to Governor Sununu's quote. How long? I mean, rhetorical question. I know this is not fair to ask the press a question. I'm not asking you. But think about, did you ever think that one man out of office could intimidate an entire party?
He's talking about Trump.
Where they're unwilling to take any vote contrary to what he thinks should be taken for fear of being defeated in a primary. I've had 5 Republican senators talk to me, bump into me, quote unquote, or sit with me, who've told me that they agree with whatever I'm talking about for them to do. But Joe, if I do it, I'm going to defeat it in a primary. We got to break that. It's got to change. And I doubt you're all, it sounds like I'm being solicitous, you're all bright as hell, well-informed, more informed than any group of people in America. But did any of you think that you get to a point where not a single Republican would diverge on a major issue? Not one? Anyway.
Those 5 Republican
That
senators
was it?
are?
That was
Sure.
the answer?
No, are you kidding me? I maintain confidentiality.
On
But
voting
I'm
rights,
sure you've spoken to some.
on voting rights, sir,
Yes.
at your first press conference 10 months
Our
ago, I
corporate
asked you
media
if there
is
was
a
anything
joke.
you could do beyond
What
legislation to protect voting
What
rights.
an
And at that time you
embarrassment
said
to our
yes,
country.
but I'm not going to lay out a strategy before you and the world
You
now.
haven't asked a
Now
single
that
question.
legislation appears to be hopelessly stalled,
You're all asking the
can
same
you
question.
now lay out your strategy to protect voting rights?
Well, I'm not prepared to do that in detail in terms of the executive orders I may be able to engage in and other things I can do. But one of the things we have done,
Oh,
we have significantly
now our
beefed
corporate
up
communist press is
number of
pushing for Joe Biden to,
enforcement
through
in the Justice
executive fiat, take
who are
over
there to
unconstitutionally
challenge
electoral
these
mechanisms inside of the states.
unconstitutional efforts, in our view, unconstitutional efforts on the part of the Republicans to stack the election and subvert the outcomes. We have begun to organize in ways that we didn't before the communities beyond the civil rights community to make the case to the rest of the American people what's about to happen, what will happen if, in fact, these things move forward. If I had talked to you, not you, I'm using you in an editorial sense, if I've talked to the public about the whole idea of subversion of elections by deciding who the electors are after the fact, I think people would have looked at me like, whoa, I mean, I taught constitutional law for 20 years, 3-credit course in separation of powers, and on Saturday mornings when I was a senator. And I never thought we'd get into a place where we were talking about being able to actually, what they tried to do this last time out, send different electors to the state legislative bodies to represent who won the election, saying that I didn't win, but Republican candidate won. I doubt whether anybody thought that would ever happen in America in the 21st century, but it's happening. And so I guess what I'm saying is, Nancy, is that I think that there are a number of things we can do.
Incredible.
But I also think we will be able to get significant pieces of the legislation, if we don't get it all now, to build to get it so that we get a big chunk of the John Lewis legislation as well as the Fair Elections Policy.
Sir, on COVID, if you don't mind, you touted the number of Americans who are now fully vaccinated with 2 shots, but even some of your own medical advisors say that people aren't fully protected unless they have that 3rd shot,
Yeah.
a booster.
Oh my God.
Why hasn't
Oh my God.
this White House changed
Make it
the
end.
definition of fully vaccinated to include
Make
that
it end.
3rd booster shot? Is it because the
This is why Joe Biden
numbers
does
of fully
no press
vaccinated
conferences
Americans would
or few
suddenly
press
look
conferences.
a lot less
No, it's not
impressive?
Joe
that
Biden's
at all.
entire
It's
staff
just-
told
it's
him to
just-
just
this
pivot
is-
from
this
every
has
single
become
question about his
clear
own
and clear.
failures.
And every time I speak of it, I say, if you've been vaccinated, get your booster shot. Everybody get the booster shot. It's the optimum protection you can have. You're protected very well with 2 shots. If it's the Pfizer, anyway, you're protected. But you are better protected with the booster shot.
The definition right now.
I'm following what the answer is yes, get the booster shot. It's all part of the same thing. You're better protected.
Oh, okay.
Um,
Got it. So Joe Biden
okay,
just said that to be fully vaccinated,
Alex,
you need your booster.
Alper,
Got it.
Reuters.
Thank you, Mr. President. I wanted to follow up briefly on a
Our-
question asked by
Oh
Bloomberg.
my
You
God.
said that Russia would be held accountable if it invades, and it depends on what it does. It's one thing if it's a minor incursion, and we end up having to fight about what to do and what not to do. Are you saying that a minor incursion by Russia into Ukrainian territory
Yeah,
would
this
not
is
lead to
amazing.
the sanctions that you have threatened? Or are you effectively giving Putin permission to make a small incursion into the country?
Good question.
Look at them giggle
So it
together.
did sound like
She's
it.
giggling.
The most important thing to do.
Joe Biden said it's
Big
okay
nations can't bluff, number one.
if there's a
Number
small
2,
incursion, just the tip,
The idea
into Ukraine from
that
Russia.
we would do anything
Just
to
a tip.
split NATO, which would be have a profound impact on one of Putin's objectives is to weaken NATO, would be a big mistake. So the question is, if it's something significantly short of a significant invasion, or not even significant, just major military forces coming across. For example, it's one thing to determine that if they continue to use cyber efforts, well, we can respond the same way with cyber. They have FSB people in Ukraine now trying to undermine the solidarity within Ukraine about Russia and to try to promote Russian interest. But it's very important that we keep everyone in NATO on the same page. And that's what I'm spending a lot of time doing. And there are differences. There are differences in NATO as to what countries are willing to do depending on what happens, the degree to which they're able to go. And I want to be clear with you. The serious imposition of sanctions relative to dollar transactions and other things are things that are going to have a negative impact on the United States, as well as a negative impact on the economies of Europe as well, a devastating impact on Russia. And so I got to make sure everybody's on the same page as we move along. I think we will if there's something where there's Russian forces crossing the border, killing Ukrainian fighters, etc. I think that changes everything. But it depends on what he does, as to actually what extent we're going to be able to get total unity on the NATO front.
If I may ask a quick one on Iran, I
Okay.
just wanted to get your sense of
So
whether
again,
the Vienna
this is
talks
Joe
are making
Biden.
any progress, if you still think it's possible to reach a deal for both sides to resume compliance with the Iran nuclear deal, or if it's time to give up on that. Thank you.
I'll do it in reverse. It's not time to give up. There is some progress being made. The P5+1 is on the same page, but it remains to be seen.
So Joe Biden
Um,
just gave carte blanche for Putin to
okay.
invade Ukraine.
Kristen.
Got it.
NBC.
Got it.
Very quickly on Russia, I do
Ukraine
have a
answers
number
are
of
an
domestic
absolute
policy
cluster
issues,
F.
but on Russia, very quickly,
An
it seemed like you
absolute
said that you
cluster
have
F.
assessed, you feel as though he will move in. Has this administration, have you determined whether President Putin plans to invade or move into Ukraine, as you said?
Look, the only thing I'm confident of
Incredible.
is that decision is totally, solely, completely a Putin decision. Nobody else is going to make that decision. No one else is going to impact that decision. He's making that decision. And I suspect it matters which side of the bed he gets up on in the morning as to exactly what he's going to do. And I think it is not irrational, if he wanted to talk about dealing with strategic doctrine and dealing with force structures in Europe and in the European parts of Russia. But I don't know whether he's decided he wants to do that or not.
The European
So
parts
far,
of
in
Russia.
the 3 meetings we've had, OSCE, and anyway, have not produced anything, because the impression I get from my Secretary of State, my National Security Advisor, and my other senior officials that are doing these meetings is that there's a question of whether the people they're talking to know what he is going to do. So the answer is, but based on a number of criteria as to what he could do. For example, for him to move in and occupy the whole country, particularly from the north, from Belarus, he's going to have to wait a little
From
bit
where?
till the ground's frozen so he can cross. To move in a direction where he wants to talk about what's going. We're continuing to provide
Oh my
for
God.
defense capacities to the Ukrainians. We're talking about
What
what's going
the
on. in
hell
both
is
the,
happening,
the
people?
Baltic
This
and the Black
is
Sea, etc.
such a
range of
meltdown.
things that I'm sure he's trying to calculate how quickly he can do what he wants to do and what does he want to do. But he's not. He's an informed individual, and I believe he's calculating what the immediate, short term, and the near term and the long term consequences of Russia will be. And I don't think he's made up his mind yet.
I want to ask you about your domestic agenda. You've gotten a lot of questions about voting rights.
Biden's giving a green
Mr.
light.
President, but I want to ask you
A
about
green light for
black
Putin to
voters,
invade
one
Ukraine.
of your most loyal constituencies.
Yep.
I was in
A green
Congressman
light.
Clyburn's district yesterday in South Carolina. You opened this news conference talking
A
about
minor
him.
incursion
I
would be
spoke to
okay.
a number of black voters who fought to get you elected, and now they feel as though you are not fighting hard enough for them and their priorities. And they told me they see this push on voting rights
Gone are
more
the days.
as a last-minute PR push than it is a legitimate
Peace
effort
through
to get
strength.
legislation passed. So what do you say to these black voters who say that you do not have their backs, as you promised on the campaign trail?
I've had their back. I've had their back my entire career. I've never not had their back. And I started on the voting rights issues long, long ago. That's what got me involved in politics in the first place. And I think part of the problem is, look, there's significant disagreement in every community on whether or not the timing of assertions made by people has been in the most timely way. So I'm sure that there are those who are saying that why didn't Biden push John Lewis bill as hard as he pushed it the last month? Why didn't he push it 6 months ago as hard as he did now? The fact is that there is
His brain's broken again. There he goes. Brain broke.
there's a
Look,
timing
listen to this.
that is not of one's own choice is somewhat dictated by events that are happening in country and around the world as to what the focus
In
is.
country.
But part of the problem is, as well, I have not been out in the community nearly enough. I've been here an awful lot. I find myself in a situation where I
I've
don't
been
get a
here
chance
a lot.
to look people in the eye.
He spent
because
28
of
days
the
in
COVID
Delaware at his
and
beach house.
Things that are happening
I'm sorry.
in Washington.
He spent
To be
28%
able
of his
to go
first
out
year
and
in
do the
Delaware at his
things that
beach
I've
house.
always been able to do pretty well. Connect with people.
And
Let
he's
them take a
complaining that he
measure
spent too much
of
time
my
in Washington,
sincerity.
D.C.
Let them take a measure of who I am. For example, I mean, as I pointed out in South Carolina, last time when I was chairman of the Judiciary Committee, I got the Voting Rights Act extended for 25 years, and I got Strom Thurmond to vote for it. That's what I've been doing my whole career. And so the idea that I didn't
There he
either
goes again.
anticipate or because
Broke
I
brain,
didn't speak to
spinny
it
apple symbol.
as fervently as they want me to earlier. In the meantime, I was spending a lot of time, spent hours and hours and hours talking with my colleagues on the Democratic side, trying to get them to agree that if in fact this occurred, if this push continued, that they would be there for John Lewis. And anyway, so
Anyway,
but
what?
I think that's a problem
this is a disaster.
that is my own making by not
This is a
communicating
disaster.
as much as I should have.
31 trips
Yet,
to Delaware.
you find that when you deal with members of the Black Caucus and others in the United States Congress, I still have very close working relationships. So it's like every community. I'm sure that there
What about
are
with your
those in the community and
what about with your vice
big
president,
labor.
huh?
I'm sure there's people in labor saying, why haven't I been able to do A, B, C, or D?
You have
So
a close
it's
working
just gonna
relationship.
take a little
Is
bit
Peter
of time.
Ducey going to get a question?
You put Vice President Harris in charge of voting rights. Are you satisfied with her work on this issue?
There you
And
go.
can you guarantee, do you commit that she will be your running mate in 2024?
There's Peter Ducey.
Provided that you run again?
Yes and yes.
Okay. You don't care to expand?
Pardon me?
Do you care to expand on voting
No, there's
rights?
no need to. I mean, I asked the question. She's going to be my running mate, number one. And number two, I did put her in charge. I think she's doing a good job.
Let me ask you, big picture, particularly when you think about voting rights and the struggles you've had to unify your own party around voting rights. Unity was one of your key campaign promises. In fact, in your inaugural
Senile
address, you said your
geriatric
whole
patients
soul was in
make
bringing
really bad
America
presidents,
together,
ladies and gentlemen.
uniting our people. People heard the speech that you gave on voting rights in Georgia recently, in which you described
If you
those
are an
who opposed
animated
to you,
mannequin
George
corpse for
Wallace and
communism-
Jefferson Davis, and some people took exception to that. What do you say to those who were offended
And
by
you
your
spend all
speech?
day
And is
in a
this
bathrobe
country more unified
With a warm
than
bowl
it
of
was when you
applesauce on your
first
lap,
took office?
drooling.
Number one,
Not a great president.
anybody who
What a
listened to the
disaster.
speech, I did not say that there were going to be a George Wallace or a Bull Connor. I said we're going to have a decision in history that is going to be marked just like it was then. You either voted on the side that didn't make you George Wallace or didn't make you Bull Connor. But if you did not vote for the Voting Rights Act back then, you were voting with those who agreed with Connor. Those
Painful.
who agreed with and so
Painful.
and I
Weak,
think
weak,
Mitch did a
weak,
real good
rambling
job of making it
answers,
sound like
rambling
I
nonsense,
was attacking them. If you
broken
notice, I
brain,
haven't attacked anybody publicly.
dementia garbage.
Any senator, any congressman.
Look at this.
public.
Weak, rambling,
And
staggering,
my
stuttering,
disagreements
feeble.
with them have been
weak.
made to them, communicated to them privately or in
What a
person. with
disaster.
them.
What a disconnect from reality.
My desire still is, look, I underestimated one very important thing. I never thought that the Republicans, like for
There he
example,
goes.
I said they got very upset. I said there are
Broken
16 members
Brain.
of the present United States Senate who voted to extend the Voting Rights Act. Now, they got very offended by that. That wasn't an accusation, it was stating a fact. What has changed? What happened? What happened?
More whispering.
Why is there not a single Republican?
Hey, Joe.
Not one.
Hey, Joe.
That's not the Republican Party. So that's not an attack.
Whose party was Bull
Is the
Connor a
country
part
more
of?
unified than when you first took office?
Whose party is Jefferson Davis a
The
part of?
answer is,
Which
based
party
on
passed
some of the
Jim
stuff
Crow?
we've got done, I'd say
Which party was the
yes,
party of the
but it's not nearly
KKK?
unified as it should be. Look,
Your
I
party.
still contend, and I know you'll have a right
Which
to
party was the
judge
party
me
of the
on this.
Confederacy? The
I still
Democrat Party.
contend that unless you can reach consensus in a democracy, you cannot sustain the democracy. And so this is a real test, whether or not my counterpart in China is right or not when he says autocracies are the only thing that are going to prevail because democracies take too long to make decisions and countries are too divided. I believe we're going through one of those inflection points in history that occurs every several generations or even more than that, even more time than that, where things are changing almost regardless of any particular policy. The world's changing in big ways. We're going to see, if you've heard me say this before, we're going to see more change in the next 10 years than we've seen in the last 50 years because of technology, because of fundamental alterations in alliances that are occurring not because of any one individual, just because of the nature of things. And so I think you're going to see an awful lot of transition. And the question is, can we keep up with it? Can we maintain the democratic institutions that we have, not just here, but around the world, to be able to generate democratic consensus on how to proceed? It's going to be hard. It's going to be hard, but it requires leadership to do it. And I'm not giving up on the prospect of being able to do that. Thank you.
Mr. President. Here we go.
Sir. There are
No.
deep questions among Americans about the competence of
okay.
government. From the messy rollout
with Jeff
of
Zeleny.
5G this week to the Afghanistan
Peter
withdrawal,
Ducey is right
to
there in the front
testing
row.
on COVID. What have you done to restore Americans' faith in the competence of government? And are you satisfied by the view of the competence of your government?
What are these
Look,
like waxing philosophical questions?
let's take
Shut up.
Afghanistan.
Not a
I mean,
single question on the border?
Which is legitimate. We were spending $1 trillion a week. $1 billion a week in Afghanistan for 20 years. Raise your hand if you think anyone was going to be able to unify Afghanistan under one single government. It's been the graveyard of empires for a solid reason. It is not susceptible to unity, number one. So the question was, do I continue to spend that much money per week in the state of Afghanistan, knowing that the idea that being able to succeed, other than sending more body bags back home, is highly, highly unusual. My dad used to have an expression. He'd say, son, if everything's equally important to you, nothing's important to you. There is no way to get out of Afghanistan after 20 years easily. Not possible, no matter when you did it. And I make no apologies for what I did. I have a great concern for the women and men who were blown up on the line at the airport by a terrorist attack against them.
Blown up.
The military will acknowledge, and I think you will, who know a lot about foreign policy, that had we stayed and I had not pulled those troops out, we would be asked to put somewhere between 20 and 50,000 more troops back in. Because the only reason
No
more
apologies for
Americans weren't
Afghanistan.
being
Nothing.
killed than
No
others
apologies.
is because the last president
No
signed
apologies
an
to the
agreement
families.
to get out by May the 1st. And so everything was copacetic. Had we not gotten out, and the acknowledgement is we'd be putting a lot more forces in. Now, do I feel badly what's happening?
Joe Biden just
to-
said
as a consequence of the incompetence of the Taliban?
we got blown up.
Yes, I do. But I feel badly also about the fistulas that are taking place in Eastern Congo. I feel badly about a whole range of things around the world. that we can't solve every problem.
Eastern Congo.
And so I don't view that as a competence issue. The issue of whether or not there's competence in terms of whether or not we're dealing with 5G or not, we don't deal with 5G. The fact is that you had two private enterprises that had one promoting 5G and the other one are airlines. They're private enterprises. They
You
have
went from
government
Afghanistan to
regulation.
5G?
And so what I've done is pushed as hard as I can to have 5G folks hold up
Guys, he's talking the
and
Great
abide
Reset.
by what was being
He
requested
wants
by the
autocracy.
airlines until they could
He
more
wants
modernize
communism.
over the years, so that 5G would not interfere with the potential of the landing. So any 5G tower within a certain number of miles from the airport should not be operative. And so I understand, but anything that happens that's consequential is viewed as the government's responsibility. I get that. Am I satisfied with the way in which we have dealt with COVID and all the things that go along with that? Yeah, I am satisfied. I think we've done remarkably well.
You're satisfied.
You know, the idea that
I think I've done remarkably
testing,
well, he
we've
says,
done-
on COVID.
we should have done it quicker, but we've done remarkable since then. What
You've
we
done
have is
remarkably.
we have more testing going on than anywhere in the world.
More deaths
And we're
under
gonna
you than
continue to
Trump.
increase
That's
that.
all you got to know.
Did we have it at the moment exactly when we should have moved? And could we have moved a month earlier? Yeah, we could have. But with everything else that's going on, I don't view that as somehow a mark of incompetence. Look, think of what we did on COVID. When we were pushing on AstraZeneca to provide more vaccines. Well, guess what? They didn't have the machinery to be able to do it. So I physically went to Michigan, stood there in a factory with the head of AstraZeneca, and said, "We'll provide the machinery for you. This is what we'll do. We'll help you do it so that you can produce this vaccine more rapidly." I think that's pretty hands-on stuff. We also said right now, when the hospitalizations are
We're not going to
overrunning
see
hospitals, and you have
Another
docs
press
and
conference.
nurses out
Get ready.
because of
Enjoy,
COVID,
ladies and
they
gentlemen.
have
You're not
to-
going to see Joe Biden for
we
another
put
year.
thousands of people back
after
in
this train
those
wreck.
hospitals.
They
Look
are
at
going to
all
shove
the
this man
all the military
into
personnel
a
we
basement
have
near
there.
the center of the
First
earth.
responders.
They are going to give him
Nobody has ever organized.
incredibly
Nobody
large
has
amount
ever
of
organized
Metamucil.
a strategic operation to get as
They are
many
going to
shots
put
in arms by opening clinics and keeping
room
and
temperature
being able
porridge
to
on
get
his lap,
So many people vaccinated.
Tighten up his
What
depends,
I'm doing now
and
is
you
not
will
just
never see
getting
Joe Biden again. And
significant
enjoy.
amounts of
Enjoy. You're
vaccines
witnessing the
to
last
rest
time
of
they'll
the
let Joe
world,
Biden
but
ever
they
talk
now need
to the press.
mechanical way is how they get
This
shots
is the
in
last
arms.
time Brandon
So we're
ever
providing
speaks to
them
the
to
press.
know how to do that. Now, should everybody in America know that? No, I don't necessarily know that. They're just trying to figure out how to put three squares on the table and stay safe. But so I do
Oh,
think
man.
the place where
This shtick
I was
that
a little
Biden thinks he
disappointed,
knows,
I
like
wish
what
we could have
regular
written it
families
differently,
are going through.
is when we did the legislation to provide the funding for COVID and the money we provided for the
I'm the
states
Biden
to be
staff
able
member
to
right
deal
now.
with keeping schools open. Some of them didn't do a very good job. Some are still holding the money.
I'm the Biden
I
staff
don't have the
member.
authority to do anything about that. I think that's not particularly competent. There's things that could and should have been done. They could have moved faster. So I understand the frustration. You know, I remember,
Close the book.
I think it was, I forget which cabinet member saying to Barack Obama, where something was going on, and he said, "Well, you're going to be sure, Mr. President, of the millions of employees you have out there, somebody's screwing up right now. Somebody's screwing up." So, it's just but I think you have to look at things
That's
as
his-
you used to look at it on balance.
That's his take. Somebody's
What is
screwing
the
up right
trajectory
now.
of the country? Is it moving in the right direction now? I don't know how we can say it's not. I understand the overwhelming frustration, fear, and concern with regard to inflation.
How can't we say the
COVID.
country's moving in the right direction?
But the idea, if I told you when we started, I tell you what I'm going to do. First year, I'm going to create over 6 million jobs. I'm going to get unemployment down to 3.9%. I'm going to generate, and I named it all. You'd look at me like you're nuts. Maybe I'm wrong.
President, at least in our recent memory, with as much Washington experience as you entered this office
Believable.
with. But yet, after we sit here for more than an hour,
Oh, and here
I'm
we
not
go.
sure I've heard you say if you would do anything differently
More
in the second
bootlicking.
year of your term. Do you plan to do anything differently?
look, the thing I have to
Are
do-
you
Philosophical
satisfied with your
trash.
team here at the White House, sir?
I'm satisfied with the team. There's three things I'm going to do differently now that I've gotten the critical crises out of the way in the sense of that movement,
Critical
knowing
crises?
exactly where we're going.
We have the highest inflation in
Number
40
one.
years.
I'm going to get out of this place more often. I'm going to go out and talk to the public. I'm going to
got
do
it.
public fora. I'm going to interface with them. I'm going to make the case of what we've already done, why
Yeah.
it's important.
He's gonna
and
talk
what
to
we'll
Americans.
do
That's gonna
if-
convince
What will
them.
happen if they support what else I want to do? Number two, I'm bringing in more and more now that I have time. I mean, literally, like you, I'm not complaining. It's, 12, 14 hours a day. No complaints. I really mean it sincerely. But now that certain of the big chunks have been put in place and we know the direction.
You've been working
I'm
12
also
and
gonna be
14-hour
out
days.
there
Yeah.
Seeking the more
Okay.
advice of experts
If you believe
outside,
that, I have a
from
bridge to sell you in
academia
Alaska.
to editorial writers to think tanks, and I'm bringing them in, just like I did early on, bringing in presidents and historians to get their perspective on what we should be doing, seeking more input, more information, more constructive criticism about what I should and shouldn't be doing. And the third thing that I'm going to be doing a lot more of is being in a situation where I'm able to I'm going to be deeply involved in these off-year elections.
Ooh, man.
We're going to be raising a lot of money. We're going
Oh,
to be
man.
out there making sure that we're helping all of those
You have a
candidates.
30%
And
approval
scores have
rating.
already asked me to
7
come
out
in
of
and
10
campaign
Americans
with
tell you to go
to go
shove
out
it
and make the case
every
in
single
plain,
day.
simple language as
And
to
you think
what
that
it
you have
is
political
we've done,
capital
what we
to go
want
out
do,
and
why we
campaign?
think it's important.
You're going to get roasted. Come on, Peter Ducey. Peter
How
Ducey.
many more hours am I doing this? I'm happy
Peter
to stick
Ducey.
around.
You've been on for 1 hour. Fox News. Peter Ducey.
You always ask me the nicest questions.
Go.
I know you do.
All right.
None of them make a
Good.
lot of sense to me, but
Well, let's try.
Fire
again.
away. Come on.
A new year.
Oh, good. Okay.
Why are you trying so hard in your first year to pull the country so far to the left?
well,
Good
I'm
question.
not. I don't know what you consider to be too far to the left. If in fact we're talking about making sure that we had the money for COVID, making sure we had the money to put together the bipartisan infrastructure, making sure we were able to provide for those things that in fact would significantly reduce the burden on working class people, but make them, they have to continue to work hard. I don't know how that is pulling it to the left. If you may recall, you guys have been trying to convince me that I am Bernie Sanders. I'm not. I like him, but I'm not Bernie Sanders. I'm not a socialist. I'm a mainstream Democrat, and I have been. And mainstream Democrats have overrun me. If you notice, the 48 of the 50 Democrats supported me in the Senate on virtually everything I've asked. Yes, sir.
A moment ago, you were asked whether or not you believed that we would have free and fair elections
Oh
in
my
2022 if some of
God.
these state legislatures reforms their voting protocols. You said that it depends. Do you think that they would in any way be illegitimate?
Oh, yeah, I think it easily could be illegitimate. Imagine if, in fact, Trump has succeeded in convincing Pence to not count the votes. Imagine if,
In regards to 2022, sir, the midterm elections.
2022, I mean, imagine if those attempts to say that the count was not legit. You have to recount it, or we're not going to count, we're going to discard the following votes. I mean, sure, I'm not saying it's going to be legit. It's the increase in the prospect of being illegitimate is in direct proportion to us not being able to get these reforms passed. But I don't think you're not going to see me, and I don't think you're going to see the Democratic Party give up on coming back at assuming that the attempt fails today.
One more, sir. You know, you campaigned and you ran on a return to civility, and I know that you dispute the characterization that you called folks who would oppose those voting bills as being Bull Connor or George Wallace, but you said that they would be sort of in the same camp.
No, I didn't say that. Look what I said. Go back and read what I said and tell me if you think I called anyone who voted on the side of the position taken by Bull Connor that they were Bull Connor.
And
That is an interesting reading of English. I assume you got into journalism because you like to write.
so did you expect that that would work with Senators Manchin or Sinema?
No, here's the thing. There's certain things that are so consequential.
What
You
the
have to
hell is
speak
he
from your heart as well
talking
as your
about?
head. I was speaking out forcefully on what I think to be at stake. That's what it is. And by the way, no one
Still
forgets
perfect.
who was on the side of King or Bull
Listen,
Connor.
Grandpa's getting angry.
No one not done that. The history books will note it. And when I was making the case, don't think this is a freebie. You don't get to vote this way and then somehow it goes away. This
Grandpa's
will be
got
stick
full
with you
drawers.
the rest of your career and long after you're gone.
And Mr. President,
And
if
folks,
Sir,
I'm
one more
off.
on Ukraine, please, sir.
okay, whoa,
President.
whoa. Hang on,
He
guys.
looks at his watch.
We've only gone an hour and 20 minutes. I'll keep going. But I'm going to go. Let me get something straight here.
Oh, come on.
How long are you guys ready to go? You want to go for another hour or two?
Yes. Yes, old man. Let's go.
Okay.
Look at that bald head.
I'm going to go. I tell you what, folks. I'm going to go another 20 minutes till 1:15. Okay?
Oh, the entire White
Yes, sir.
House staff is like, no, don't do it. No, please, God.
I want to thank my communications staff for the great help here.
Well, President Biden, on the coronavirus, we're tragically approaching nearly 1 million Americans who died. And I'd like to ask you
Ask
why
about
it
the
is
border.
during your 3.5-hour virtual summit in November with the Chinese president, you didn't press for transparency, and also whether that has anything to do with your son's involvement in an investment firm controlled by Chinese state-owned entities.
The answer is that I did raise the question of transparency. I spent a lot of time with him. And the fact is that they're just not being transparent.
Transparency on the coronavirus origins.
Yes.
And you did during
Yeah.
the virtual summit. Is there a reason your press staff was unaware of that? And what did you say to
Well,
the Chinese president?
And they weren't with me the entire time. Look, I made it clear that I thought that China had an obligation to be more forthcoming on exactly what the source of the virus was and where it came from. Yes.
Jen Psaki right now is going,
Foreign policy. What was the first priority that you declared when you came to office?
Jen Psaki's
was
going,
to end the war in Yemen, the catastrophic war in Yemen. You appointed a special envoy. Today, one of your allies, United Arab Emirates, is asking your administration to put back the Houthi rebels or militias back on the terror list. Are you going to do that? And how are you going to end the war in Yemen, sir?
The answer is it's under consideration, and ending the war in Yemen takes the two parties to be involved to do it.
dude,
And it's
you're
gonna be
asking
very
about
difficult.
Yemen? Not a single question. By the way, shame on you. There have been some conservative
Thank you very
reporters.
much
Not a
for this
single
honor.
question
James
about our
Rosen with
border.
Newsmax. I'd like to raise a delicate subject, but with utmost respect for your life accomplishments and the high office you hold. A poll released this morning by Politico Morning Consult
Oh, come on.
found
You don't have to bootlick.
49% of registered voters disagreeing with the statement, Joe Biden is mentally fit. Not even a majority of Democrats who responded strongly affirmed that statement.
Well, I'll let you all make the judgment whether they're correct.
Well,
Thank
so
you.
the question I have for you, sir, if you'd let me finish, is why do you suppose such large segments of the American electorate have come to harbor such profound concerns about your cognitive fitness? Thank you.
I have no idea. Yes, sir.
Oh yeah, we have no idea. We have no idea.
Thanks,
Old
Mr.
man has
President. I
yelled at
appreciate
cloud.
it. I wanted to sort of address or ask about attention that's sort of been in this press conference on unifying the
come
country,
on,
because
man.
you campaigned on two things. One of them is being able to accomplish big things, and the other
Ask
is
about the
ability
border.
to unify the country.
By the
and
way,
even
Joe Biden
today
doesn't
you've
think-
talked about sort of a different posture with
Joe Biden has
Republicans,
no
and
idea why people are
wonder
worried about his
if-
mental
if
fitness?
you still think it's possible to do both of those things.
We have to. We have to. I mean, as long as I hold public office, I'm going to continue to attempt to do both things.
More follow-up. Around this time last year when you were campaigning in Georgia, I think one of the things you told people was the power is literally in your hands. You know, if voters give Democrats the House and the Senate and the presidency, that all these big things can get accomplished. And, you know, we've seen stalemate, we've seen things being stymied. Why should folks believe you this time around?
Can you think of any other president's done as much in 1 year? Name one for me.
I'm asking you.
I'm serious. You guys talk about how nothing's happened. I don't think there's been much on any incoming president's plate that's been a bigger menu than the plate I had given to me. I'm not complaining. Knew that running in. And the fact of the matter is we got an awful lot done. An awful lot done. And there's more to get done. But look, let me ask a rhetorical question.
Wait, so people are supposed. Hold up.
No, I won't. Anyway.
What? Oh, I wonder, why do people not
Thank
think
you.
you're cognitively fit?
Yes.
And then he just goes and says, how did people?
Be careful. Don't get hurt, man.
No, I'm going to take
president done more than
Mr.
me?
President, thank you.
Anyway.
Sebastian Smith from AFP. Another question on Ukraine. Ukraine borders 4 NATO member countries. How concerned are you concerned that a real conflagration in Ukraine, if the Russians really go in there, that it could suck in NATO countries that are on the border and you end up with an actual NATO-Russia confrontation of some kind? And secondly, are you entertaining the thought of a summit with Vladimir Putin as a way to perhaps try and put this whole thing to bed, address their concerns, and negotiate a way out of this?
The last part, the last question, yes. When we talked about whether or not we'd pick the 3 meetings we talked about, and we talked about we would go from there if there was reason to go to a summit. We talked about a summit as being before the Ukraine item came up in terms of strategic doctrine and what the strategic relationship would be. So I still think that is a possibility, number one. Number two, I am very concerned. I'm very concerned that this could end up being, look, the only war that's worse than one that's intended is one that's unintended. And what I'm concerned about
The only
is this
war
could get out
that's
of
worse
hand.
than one that's intended
Very easily get out
is
of
one
hand
that's
because of what you
unintended.
said. The borders
Wise.
of
He's
the
wise. He's
Ukraine
wise. He's
and
like
what
a
Russia
Chinese
may or may not do.
philosopher.
I am
Or like a guy who got
hoping that
$1 billion from the
Vladimir
Chinese
Putin
for his son's
understands that
crackhead
he
investment
is
firm.
short
One of those two.
a full-blown nuclear war, he's not in a very good position to dominate the world. And so I don't think he thinks that. But it is a concern. And that's why we have to be very careful about how we move forward and make it clear to him that there are prices to pay that could, in fact, cost his country an awful lot. But of course, you have to be concerned when you have, nuclear power invaded. If he invades, it hasn't happened since World War II. This is the most consequential thing that's happened in the world in terms of war.
Are they going to cut his mic off?
Since World War II.
The White House going to cut off his mic?
Yes.
Nearly 2 years have passed since the beginning of the global coronavirus outbreak, and you again today acknowledge that Americans are frustrated and they're tired. Based on your conversations with your health advisors, what type of restrictions do you imagine being on Americans this time next year, and what does the new normal look like for social gatherings and travel to you?
Well, the answer is I hope the new normal will be that we don't still have 30-some million people not vaccinated. I hope the new normal is people have seen what their own interest is and have taken advantage of what we have available to us. Number two, with the pill that is a problem that appears to be as efficacious as it seems to be, that you're going to be able to deal with this virus in a way that after the fact you have an ability to make sure you don't get very sick. Number three, I would hope that what happens is the rest of the world does what I'm doing and provides significant amounts of the vaccine to the rest of the world, because it's not sufficient that we just have this country not have the virus or be able to control the virus, but that we can't build a wall high enough to keep a new variant out. So it requires one of the things that I want to do, and we're contemplating figuring out how to do, we are contemplating how to get done, and that is how do we move in a direction where the world itself is vaccinated. It's not enough just to vaccinate 340 million, fully vaccinate 340 million people in the United States. That's not enough. It's not enough to do it here. We have to do it, and we have to do a lot more than we're doing now. And that's why we have continued to keep the commitment of providing vaccines and available cures for the rest of the world as well.
And if I could, sir, and I should have said this before, Francesca Chambers McClatchy, how do you plan to win back moderates and independents who cast a ballot for you in 2020, but polls indicate aren't happy with the way you're doing your job now?
I don't believe the polls. Well, why don't you just go down the road there?
Thank you, Mr. President. To follow up on some of the questions about the vaccination program, you've given dozens of speeches this year urging Americans to get vaccinated. You've talked to reluctant
So his
Republicans.
answer on
You've
like
said
how he's
it's
going to win
people's
back independents that
patriotic duty.
hate him?
There have been very few mentions of the fact that young
7 out of 10
children under the
independents
age of 5
despise Joe
still in the third year of
Biden.
this
A majority
pandemic
of
in this
Americans want Joe
country
Biden to resign.
don't have access to the vaccine. Can you speak to frustrated parents a little bit
my
about
God.
why that continues to be
Another
the case
vaccine question.
and when that might change?
Because
Guys,
the science hasn't reached the point.
Not a
that
single
convinced
person
that
in the
in
Washington
fact
press
it's
corps
safe.
asked about the border.
So that's what they're doing now. You could have asked me that. I got
our
asked
media
that
is so
question
broken. Our media is so
about, 3 months ago about people
shameful.
between the ages of 7 and 12. Well, they've got to the point where they felt secure in the number of tests they had done and the tests they had run that it was safe. So it will come. It will come. But I'm not a scientist. I can't tell you when, but it is really very important that we get down to that next piece.
One more follow-up on Build Back Better. When you said it's going to likely be broken up into chunks, you mentioned that the climate pieces seem to have broad support. You mentioned that Senator Manchin is a supporter of early child care. You left out the child tax credit, and I wonder if it's fair to read between the lines and assume that that is a piece, given Senator Manchin's opposition to it, that the extension of that is likely one of those components that may have to wait until sometime down the line.
There's two really big components that I feel strongly about that I'm not sure I can get in the package. One is the child care tax credit, and the other is help for cost of community colleges. They are massive things that I've run on, I care a great deal about, and I'm going to keep coming back at whatever floor I get to be able to try to get chunks or all of that done. Yes, sir. Next man next to you, left.
Thank you, Mr. President. My name is Pedro Rojas. I'm with Univision National News. This is actually my first press conference here. It's good to meet you in person.
We always have long press conferences.
Awesome.
No.
I got a couple of questions
No,
for you.
don't.
Number one, you said that you want to convey your message by getting out there in the country. I wonder if you're planning on traveling also to South America and other countries in the Western Hemisphere, given the fact that China has gained a lot of influence in the region. And the second question is, what will be your message for residents in this country that are struggling every time they go to the gas station, every time they go to the grocery store and see the prices going high, and the pharmacy? I happen to come from South Texas, where I saw a lot of people struggling financially in the last few months, and so I wonder what is the message you want to spread to them.
Well, I tried to answer that 7 different ways today about how to deal with inflation. But let me answer the first question. I spent a lot of time in South America and in Latin America. When I was vice president, I spent the bulk of my 8 years basically in Europe and or in Latin America. I'm in contact with the leaders of the countries in South America. We're working closely with making sure that we do everything, for example, with the to deal with helping the countries in question, particularly those in Central America, to be able to help them with their ability to deal with the people don't sit around in Guatemala and say, I got a great idea. Let's sell everything we have, give the money to a coyote, take us across a terribly dangerous trip up through Central America and up through Mexico and sneak us across the border, drop us in the desert. Won't that be fun? People leave because they have real problems. And one of the things I've done when I was a vice president, got support with, although I don't have much Republican support anymore, is provide billions of dollars to be able to say to those countries, why are people leaving? And how are you going to reform your own system? And that's we've worked on a long time. It still needs a lot more work, and we're focusing on that. I also believe I've spent a lot of time talking about and dealing with policy having to do with Maduro, who is a little more than a dictator right now. And the same thing in Chile and not the same thing, but with Chile as well as Argentina. So look, I made a speech a while ago when I was vice president saying that if we were smart, we have an opportunity to make the Western Hemisphere a democratic hemisphere. And we were moving in the right direction under
Our media is scum.
the last administration. The Obama
Our media
Biden
is scum. Communist scum.
But so much damage was done as a consequence of the foreign policy decisions the last president made in Latin America,
They're
Central
responsible
America, and South America.
for getting this man
that
elected.
We now have, when I call for a summit of the democracies,
complicit.
I call that, and a number of nations showed up for this summit of democracy.
And now we
What
get
is it that's gonna allow us
4,471 questions about
to
Ukraine's
generate-
border and
we've
not
actually
one
had a
question about the
reduction
American
in
border.
the number of democracies in the world. And it seems to me there's nothing more important. We used to talk about, when I was a kid in college, about America's backyard. It's not America's backyard. Everything south of the Mexican border is America's front yard. And we're equal people. We don't dictate what happens in any other part of this continent or the South American continent. We have to work very hard on it. But the trouble is we're having great difficulty making up for the mistakes that have been made the last 4 years, and it's going to take some time. Yes, gentleman in the back. And then I'll go to this side, okay?
Thank you, Mr. President. Alexander Nazarian, Yahoo News. And thank you for holding this press conference. I hope there's more of them.
Anytime you have extra 3 hours, we can do it.
We'll stay for a couple more. You said you were surprised by Republican obstruction of your agenda, but didn't the GOP take exactly the same tactic when you were vice president to Barack Obama? So why did you think they would treat you any differently than they treated him?
First of all, they weren't nearly as obstructionist as they are now, number one. They stated that, but you had a number of Republicans we worked with closely. From John McCain, a number of Republicans we worked closely with. Even back in those days, Lindsey Graham. And so the difference here is there seems to be a desire to work with them. And I didn't say my agenda, I'm saying what are they for? What is their agenda? They had an agenda back in the administration when the 8 years we were president and vice president.
No questions on the
But
border.
I don't know what their agenda is now.
No questions on crime.
The American
highest
public is
murder
outraged
rates
about the
in
tax
12
structure.
major American cities.
What are they proposing to do about it? Anything?
In 40 years, highest
You heard
inflation in
anything?
40 years.
Anything. I haven't heard anything. The American public is outraged about the fact that we're the state of the environment. The vast majority of the public. What have they done to do anything to ameliorate the climate change that's occurring, other than to deny it exists? So what I'm saying is the difference between then and now is not only the announcement that was made anything to stop Barack Obama. I get that part. But what eventually happened, we were able to get some things done. We were able to work through some things. On the stuff that was really consequential in terms of ideologically divisive, it was a real fight. But I don't think there's a time when I wonder what would be the Republican platform right now. What do you think? What do you think their position on taxes are? What do you think their position on
lower taxes,
on human rights is? What do you think their position is on
not
whether or
torching
not,
people's human rights through illegal and unconstitutional COVID vaccines?
About the cost of prescription drugs.
Mandates?
What do you think? I mean, I just...
Not
I
forcing
honest to God don't know what they're
medical
for.
treatments
Yet
on
I know
people?
a lot of these senators.
What do you think Republicans stand for?
And I know they do have things they want to support. Whether there's things I want or not.
Law and order, borders, sound fiscal policy.
And every once in a while, when you hear something where there's a consensus, it's important, but a small item.
Supporting our cops, criminalizing communists in school and in government.
I'm not being coverage. I mean, there's not much discussion about it. So I just think it's a different. And
what do you mean, what do we stand
I
for?
don't
You'll find out what we
know
stand
that,
for in November.
No matter
you'll find out.
how strongly
when you're
one
impeached, you'll find out what
supports
we stand for.
Republican and/or supports the president, the former president of the United States. I don't know how we can't look at what happened on January 6th and think that's a problem. That's a real problem.
One more question, Mr. President. There's
By the
been
way,
an-
it's a quarter of, guys, so I'm going to do this. If you answer me easy questions, I'll give you quick answers.
There's an increasing concern, I think, among some Democrats that
Oh my God.
even if schools do continue to open, and I get that most of them are now open, Republicans will weaponize this narrative of you and other leading Democrats, allowing them to stay closed in the midterms next year. And obviously that issue has a lot of traction with suburban parents, as I think
What
we
do you
saw
mean
in
allowing?
Virginia.
I'm confused by the question. I'm sorry.
Well, that could school reopenings or closures become a
Look at how much he's
potent
touching his
midterm
mask.
issue for Republicans to win back the suburbs?
Oh, I think it could be, but I hope in God that look.
This is what the.
Maybe I'm kidding myself, but as time goes on,
Ladies and gentlemen,
the voter
that man works for Yahoo News.
Is just trying to figure out, as I said,
That person is not a
how to take
reporter.
care of their family. Put
That
three
person is a
squares on the
Democrat
table, stay
stenographer,
safe,
Democrat
maybe
plant.
pay their mortgage,
He's sitting there talking to Biden as though they're inside of a struggle session to figure out how to win in 2022.
Much
How do
more
we stop
informed
Republicans
on
from taking back the suburbs? Scum of the
the
earth.
motives of some
Scum of the earth.
political
These
players
reporters,
and some of the
corporate media, look at them.
and
Look
the
at them
political
broken.
parties. And I think that they are not going to be as susceptible
This man.
to believing
Oh,
some
man.
of the outlandish things that have been said
Oh,
and
this
continue to
man.
be said. You know, every president, not necessarily in the first 12 months, but every president the first couple of years, every president, of the last presidents, at least 4 of them, have had polling numbers that are 44% favorable. So it's this idea that, but you all, not you all, but now it is, well, Biden's at, one poll showed him at 33%. The average is 44, 45%. One poll him at 49%. I mean, the idea that
This hack. Look at him go. Broken
the
brain.
American public are trying to sift
Broken
their way
brain.
through
The spinning.
what's real and what's fake.
He's not there. He's not there. He's
And
dead.
I don't think as
He's not there.
I've never seen a time
Broken brain
when
Biden.
the political coverage, the choice of what political coverage the voter looks to has as much impact on as what they believe. They go to get
The guy's
reinforced.
name is Alexander Nazarian.
Reviews.
That's the
Whether it's,
reporter. The reporter asked,
MSNBC or
will Democrats
Fox,
keeping schools
I mean,
closed
and
for
one of the
years,
things I find
will
fascinating
Democrats keeping schools
that's
closed
happening,
for
and you all are
years
dealing with it every day,
hurt them in the
and it
election?
will impact on on how things move is that a lot of the speculation.
When does Jen Psaki pull the
shows
fire alarm in the White House?
That the
That's a good question.
that
When does
the,
Jen Psaki
cables are
yank the fire alarm in the
south.
White House?
They're losing viewership. No, well, Fox is okay for a while, but it's not gaining, and a lot of the rest are predicted to be not very much in the mix.
Now he's talking about
in the
cable
next
news
4 to 5
viewership?
years. I don't know whether that's true or not, but I do know that we have sort of put themselves in certain alleys, and they've decided that, how many people who watch MSNBC also watch Fox, other than they're a politician trying to find out what's going on in both places. How many people, again, I'm no expert in any of this, but the fact is, I think you have to acknowledge that what gets covered now.
Why is he talking about cable news
is
ratings?
Necessarily
Incredible.
a little bit
Look at how much they
different
care. It's incredible.
what gets covered
Because this
in
is the real
past.
media, ladies and
I've
gentlemen.
had a couple.
We've been live for 2 hours. This is the real media.
But the nature.
We're breaking them right
Not
now.
The nature of the
And I
way.
want to thank all of you watching on Rumble.
things get
Thousands
covered.
watching across Rumble, YouTube, and
It's
Facebook.
my observation over the years I've been involved in
Thank
public
all
life
of you.
changed. And it's changed because of everything from a thing called the internet. It's changed because of the way in which we have self-identified perspectives based on what channel you turn on, what network you look at, not network, what cable you look at. And it's never quite been like that. Anyway.
What answer was that?
On behalf of the Correspondents Association, thank you very much
then I'll go to you.
for standing for our questions. We hope the public has found it as enlightening as those of us in the room have. I want to ask you, sir, about one of the
I mean,
overriding...
I can still stand. It's amazing.
We appreciate it. We very much do. So the question I want to ask you gets to accountability.
Did he just say he's going to do
On
push-ups?
one of the top public concerns, of course, which is
Please,
the
please do
coronavirus and
push-ups.
the government's response to it. Whether it's confusion over what style of mask to wear, when to test, how to test, where to test. The public is confused, sir, and you see that in the drop-off in the polling on this question. Why did you tell Jeff that you were satisfied with your team? Why are you not willing to make or interested in making any changes, either at the CDC or other agencies, given the fact that the messages have been so confusing?
Well, first of all, the message is, to the extent they've been confusing, is because the scientists, they're learning more. They're learning more about what's needed and what's not needed. And so the fact is that the one piece that has gotten a lot of attention is
Why have you sucked on everything COVID related? Science.
Communications capacity of the CDC. Well, she came along and said, look, I'm not
Science.
I'm a scientist, and I'm learning. I'm learning how to deal with stating what is the case that we've observed. But look, I think that it's a little bit like saying when we went through the whole issue of how to deal with polio and the polio shots. What was said in the beginning was, oh, no, it's changed a little bit. We moved this way or that way. Or when we dealt with anything else. I mean, this was a brand new virus, a brand new phenomenon. Some of it was deadly. Other was more communicable. This is an unfolding story. It's the nature of the way diseases spread. We're going to learn about it in a lot of other areas, not just COVID-19. And so I think, I look at it this way. Think about how astounding it was within the time frame that it took to be able to come up with a vaccine. You used to write about that. Pretty amazing how rapidly they came up with a vaccine that saved hundreds of thousands of lives. Did everything get right? No. And by the way, the idea whether anyway, I'm talking too much.
Thank you, Mr.
Yes,
President.
ma'am.
I have two really simple questions, I promise. You campaigned on canceling $10,000 in student loans. Do you still plan to do so, and when? And then my second question is, now that you've clarified the Bull Connor comments, do you plan to reach out to Republicans like Mitt Romney to talk about reforming the Electoral Count Act?
Yes, I'm happy to speak out. I've met with Rip. I've talked to Mitt on other occasions. And by the way, I reached out to the minority leader as well at the time that he made his speech. And so
leftist, communist,
I have no
reporter, Pavel.
reluctance
Why is this country so
reach
lib?
out to any Republican and anyone who, and I've made it clear.
Why?
Look, I've now had the opportunity to travel.
Is our ruling
because
class
of
so out of touch with the
funerals
American
and
people?
eulogies
You
I've
are
made
seeing
and
it on
attended,
display
and
right now.
congressmen and senators
These
who come
reporters get a
along with
chance
me.
to ask a single
I
question
don't hold me to the number, but somewhere
to
between
arguably
20
the most
and
powerful man in this
25
country.
Senators and congresspersons have traveled with me. And I find
Except
you
for
should
Barack
get
Obama,
the
who's
list
running
of
this
them and ask
administration
how we,
from Martha's Vineyard.
set for the 2, 3, 4, 5 hours that we've
And the
flown
questions
together,
are,
sit back in
how can we
in a
vaccinate all of our
conference table and
children?
talk to them. Ask them questions.
What kind
They
of
ask me
masks should we
questions.
wear?
I learn a heck of a lot. But as president, you don't quite have that ability to do that as often as
Can we
I'd
lick
like
your
to be able
boot?
to do it. And one of the
Can we
things
kiss your
that
ass?
I do think that has been made clear to me, speaking of polling, is the public doesn't want me to be the president's senator. They want me to be the president and let senators be senators. And so if I've made many mistakes, I'm sure. If I've made a mistake, I'm used to negotiating to get things done, and I've been, in the past, relatively successful at it in the United States Senate, even as vice president. But I think that role as president is a different role. Folks, it is now almost 6. With all due respect, I'm going to see you next conference, okay? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President.
All right, here we go. And
President
there
Biden speaking for
is
nearly 2
the
hours to
skinny
members
back
of the
of
press
his
corps.
head.
The president
All
declaring
right.
the first year
All right,
of
Sam,
his
hey,
presidency
listen, we gotta,
one of enormous
let's turn
progress,
this off. Let me
but
sign
acknowledging
off
there's
the
more work
nice
to be
people.
done on issues ranging from the pandemic to his fundamental
Sam, can we turn off the,
legislative
volume
agenda. Well, this
on
news
this?
conference was the first of 2022.
Turn off the volume on the...
Yeah, it's muted.
Okay. So can I talk to the sweet people?
Yep, that's all I hear.
Okay. All right, ladies and gentlemen. There you go. Okay. Here we go, ladies and gentlemen. So we need to recap what we just saw. One, let us say the one and singular only thing that would be, that is, we can say that's nice about this current performance, which is that Joe Biden did indeed stand there for quite a long time and did take questions. Now, that's the only nice thing to say. The worst possible human example of what is going on right now in the worst conceivable thing is that Joe Biden did stand there and actually take questions. Not great, not great. Sam, can we go full screen with this? Let's try and go full screen with this. There we go. Okay. This is fun. All right. Let's center that so it's not 2 people on screen, Sam. All right. Here we go. Ladies and gentlemen, we are working here from our brand new studio. We are making it work, and we are trying really hard to bring you interesting and new and unique content, and we thank you so much for watching. We had thousands and thousands of people watching across platforms. This is the new media. This is exactly how we're going to break the systems inside of the old communist media that you saw there on full display. So 2 major issues. 1, Joe Biden is not alive. Joe Biden is not alive. I repeat, Joe Biden's brainstem doesn't work. It's not connected to his body. Joe Biden's brainstem not connected to his spine, not connected to any functional brain activity. Joe Biden is merely a houseplant. That is exactly what he does inside of the Oval Office. He gets locked in there in a dirty bathrobe, in his slippers, inside of what is the nursing home known as the White House right now. He has a lukewarm bowl of porridge on his lap, and he stares out the window. That's all he does all day. This press conference was a nightmare. It was a catastrophic and unmitigated disaster for Joe Biden. It is calamitous to have you say on live television, hey, Russia, you can just the tip Ukraine, okay? Joe Biden said, and I'm quoting, a minor incursion would essentially be all right inside of Ukraine. All right, well, that's a little terrifying, okay? Little bit terrifying. Fox News asked if the country is moving in the right direction right now. Joe Biden says, I don't know how you can say it's not. How can you say it's not moving in the right direction right now? This country, by the way, is doing worse than it's been doing in a very long time. People are sick of it. Joe Biden has a 30% approval rating. Joe Biden has dropped by 16 points in his approval rating in 1 year. 16 points. That is historic. Joe Biden is the most unpopular Democratic president in modern history, maybe the most unpopular Democrat president in American history. So here he's up there, bumbling, rambling, mumbling. Multiple times Joe Biden went like this. And just didn't know what to say. Didn't know what to do. Didn't know what he was talking about. Didn't know how to answer the question. You saw that there. It was shocking. It was like watching the MacBook spinning logo directly on the head as he's trying to think of answers to things. For instance, he couldn't think of the name Chuck Schumer. He couldn't come up with the name Bernie Sanders off the top of his head. Joe Biden has had two brain aneurysms. According to Hunter Biden's diary, Joe Biden had dementia. That's what Hunter Biden's diary says, and that's what Hunter Biden's laptop says, according to his therapist. I mean, we'll just leave it at that. We don't know. But that's what the reporting says. Go ahead and check it out. So, a lot of rambling, a lot of babbling, literal babbling. I've never seen anything like it. It was like an old man just wandering through the fields. It was like an old man just like wandering into the abyss. It was so pathetic and so sad, so many of these answers. I think it would easily be illegitimate, Joe Biden says, of elections in red states. Ladies and gentlemen, they tried to impeach, and they're now going to try and prosecute Donald Trump for questioning the results of an election. Joe Biden and the Democratic Party has done more to undermine American elections and the American election system than any single element, any single thing that Donald Trump or his entire White House ever did. This is such abject trash from these people. It is so disgusting, and it is absolutely rage-inducing. So what they are doing is they know they're going to lose in a catastrophic nuclear red tsunami from space. And so what they're setting up is for Joe Biden to say all those elections were illegitimate. Every single one of them that happened in a red state is all illegitimate. It's disgusting. It's disgusting. So Joe Biden barely called on Fox News. Fox News asked him why he's going so far left, and Joe Biden's like, what's your definition of left? Also, where's Corn Pop? Where's his razor blades? Is he on the diving board? Joe Biden said, and I quote, the increase in the prospect of being illegitimate is in proportion to not being able to get these reforms passed. That is exactly what Joe Biden said on the elections being illegitimate, calling red state elections illegitimate. I mean, that's the most damaging thing I've ever seen a president do to our democracy, period. I don't believe the polls, Biden says about polls showing him deeply unpopular. Biden was asked about how independents and Democrats are both saying, screw this guy. In fact, a majority of Americans want him to resign. A poll from the end of last year said Biden should just resign. Joe Biden says he doesn't believe the polls. The worst possible answer to that question. Joe Biden was asked about his own cognitive capacities, and Joe Biden, this was from a Newsmax reporter, a fantastic Newsmax reporter, James Rosen. James Rosen trying to be really polite to Biden up front, and then is like, listen, the majority of Americans don't believe you have the cognitive capacity to run this country. And then Joe Biden says, I don't care, essentially. Joe Biden says, I don't care. I don't care that everyone knows and can see clearly that I am legitimately suffering from cognitive decline. Joe Biden got up in the microphone and whispered a lot of really creepy ASMR whispering, a lot of that. And Biden said a nuclear power like Russia invading another country hasn't happened since World War II. Russia invaded Ukraine in 2014 when Joe Biden was vice president. Okay. So Joe Biden Fail, 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 fail. It was a nightmare. I don't know how anyone can like stay in this administration. I don't see how the entire administration doesn't just resign right now in protest. I don't know why Jen Psaki didn't just pull the fire alarm and just end the whole thing. And I don't know why. I'm just shocked that they allowed it to go on that long. Biden clearly had a pre-scripted book of reporters to call from. You saw him flipping the pages. You saw him flipping the pages on answers too. Very interesting that. And so even with the pre-scripted questions and even with all the reporters in the room asking questions, this is why DC is a poison. We had 457,000 billion questions about Ukraine's borders, not a single question about the American border, of which 2 million people, 2 million criminal migrants have poured across this year. We had a lot of questions about crimes that could potentially be committed inside of the Russia-Ukraine border, but not a single question about crime in this country. Not a single question about crime inside of our cities. Not a single question about crime in American cities where the homicide rate has gone up to the highest levels in 40 years in 12 of our major cities in this country. Shocking. Like one pathetic question on inflation, Joe Biden was like, people that make cows don't know how to, they make cows, they don't know how to make hamburger. Vaccines, vaccine mandates. Just an unmitigated disaster. Just absolute trash. I don't know how everyone doesn't just resign immediately. The thing that is a huge bright side to all of this, we did get to see exactly how Joe Brandon operates. We did get to see exactly how weak he is, how feeble he is, how demented the dementia has made his brain, his poor brain, how sick it is that the people in his family who loved him still allowed him to do this. What a repugnant and disgusting thing to let a person who is clearly in such substantial mental decline go out and do this. It's abuse. It's elder abuse. This guy didn't know what Let's Go Brandon meant. He said Let's Go Brandon on a live stream the day before Christmas. Incredible. Let's go Brandon. He told the country to go F himself. And now the country's going to actually follow his orders. Maybe the country's going to do one single thing that Joe Biden wants him to do, and that is follow his orders and say, let's go Brandon. They're just going to follow his orders and let's go Brandon. All right? The country's going to say, F you, big guy, and no more 10% for the big guy, 0% for the big guy. We are not going to vote for this crap. And if Joe Biden's thinking he's convincing anyone by like going out and doing that and like having these kind of conversations with people, doing these kind of press conferences, he says, ooh, I'm going to get out and see the people now. Ooh, oh, Nelly. Ladies and gentlemen, ooh, boy. That's not going to be great for you, Joe. The last time Joe Biden got out and saw the people, he started screaming in the face of the guy in Michigan that challenged him on the Second Amendment and challenged, called voters fat and then challenged them to push-up competitions. That's what Joe Biden did. One guy, he got up in his face, pointed to his chest and said, why don't you go vote for other guy, for anyone else? Incredible. So we welcome that day. We welcome the day that us, the freedom movement, takes back the country. We are ascendant. We are the people who will save America. We are the media. And thank you all so very much for watching. This was our, we had a lot of technical glitches, but we're working through them. We have a great team behind us. We're very, very proud to be able to bring you new, interesting, and unique content like this. And we look forward to saving America. All right? God, family, country. That's what we care about on this broadcast. Thank you all so very much for watching. Thousands and thousands and thousands of you across multiple platforms. It's been an exciting, fun little wild ride, and we're going to be doing a lot more of these. Please click like, subscribe, and share on the social media channel that you were watching on. Our first big live broadcast on Rumble. This was really exciting, and we love all of you patriots out there. Keep memeing, keep fighting. We're fighting right alongside with you. God bless all of you. See ya. Have a great night. God bless you.